Paris Perspective.
I'm David Coffey and welcome to Paris Perspective. In this edition, we're going to take a look at Turkey's uncomfortable role within NATO and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's balancing act between Moscow, Kyiv and the Western military alliance. Franco-Turkish relations have been on tenterhooks for years, with diplomacy between Ankara and Paris recently reaching such a low level that Erdogan called on the French people to get rid of President Emmanuel Macron. Dorothée Schmid is a specialist on Turkey with the Paris-based IFRI think tank and joins me in the studio today. Thank you for joining us here, Dorothée.
Bonjour, David.
Bonjour. Well, look, we have a lot to unpick here on Paris Perspective today, but let's first start with relations between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan, since especially the 2016 coup attempt. It's a complicated relationship to maintain between the two, isn't it?
Yes, just to start, I'd like to pick up what you said about the relationship or the position of Turkey being uncomfortable. I feel it's very comfortable nowadays. I mean, they're really seizing the opportunity of the Ukrainian crisis to make the world understand that their status as a global power has changed, and to comfort this and to sort of also go through a sort of rehabilitation process within NATO, where they were sort of sidelined as being the one difficult ally because of what you quoted on the Aegean, the difficulties with the French, etc. So, but as far as the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Erdogan is concerned, we know that these two leaders, they know each other very well because they've been in business together, in strategic business together, in Syria, in Libya as well. In Syria, they managed to organize a sort of coexistence on the ground with the Russians who've rushed to the rescue of Bashar al-Assad, while the Turks were an opponent. But 2016, the coup attempt in Turkey, it's been said that Putin himself is the one who warned Erdogan that there was a coup going on and who basically saved the life of Erdogan. And we really witnessed a complete reversal of the relationship at that time, at that moment. And this is the moment where also the Russians managed to bring up to a certain point the Turks on their side on Syria. And you know the Turks are part of this Astana format that's working on the peace process parallel to the UN one, to the Western one in Syria with Iran. The other thing is that Turkey had developed a very strong dependence on Russia, economically speaking. They were importing lots of Russian gas, but we see that they worked also on decreasing this dependence. They've been working on diversifying the buying
their
energy exactly. And this is very important because it's exactly what the Europeans have not done. So it means the Turks know that Russia can be a partner up to a certain point.
So, I mean, I want to come back to what you said at the beginning, that it's the uncomfortable role. It's not that you say that Turkey is actually very comfortable, but it's uncomfortable within NATO, within the NATO.
Very uncomfortable for us.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. So, but I want to get. You're saying that Erdogan is very happy in his position. Is he really just trying to capitalize on this war because there are elections ahead of next year, that he is really trying to get people on board? I mean, what exactly is his plan for Turkey? Is it an expansionist plan? Many have compared it, he's maybe looking back to the halcyon days of the Ottoman Empire. Would that be correct to say?
Well, first thing, you have to consider that Turkey is a Black Sea power, that it's as we said, it has a very strong relationship with Russia. The gas imports from Russia go through the Black Sea. Turkey was a partner of Zelensky, of Ukraine. They had a sort of strategic partnership. They were providing them with drones. They were working on building this industrial partnership on the weapons industry. And at the same time, they worked with the Russians. So they had no choice in some way than to remain neutral in this crisis, because they were engaged with both sides. And what Erdogan, I think, understood very quickly is that the polls in Turkey said that the Turks wanted Turkey to remain neutral. And what I heard from the very beginning of the Russian offensive in Ukraine, coming from Turkey, was that the Turks should remain neutral like they did during the Second World War. which is a very telling, very interesting comparison, because they joined the Allied camp at the very last minute, like February 1945, when they were sure that the Nazi side was defeated totally. So the idea is like, maybe this crisis will be short, and this is their problem. The longer it dwells on, the biggest the problem it becomes from Turkey. Why? Because Turkey is the one that's guarding the Straits.
Well, that is exactly the point I was going to say. I mean, Ankara's policies, regarding the Black Sea, I mean, could they come under pressure from NATO to close off the Dardanelles to Russian shipping? I mean, is that an option? Will they have to crumble to that as a part of NATO?
At the beginning of the crisis, there was a call from Zelensky for them to close the Bosphorus to Russian ships, and the Turks waited for a few days and said, like after, I don't remember, like a week or so, said, okay, we've now had a look at the situation, we evaluated the situation, and we thought this is a situation of war. So according to the Montreux Convention, we now have to block ships from the war, from the
coming through the Black Sea,
from the countries that are at war. Because if and remember, the Russians do not label it a war; it's a special operation. Okay, exactly, so the Turks had this ambivalence to play with, and they decided that they would block the Russian ships. And then what we heard also from Ankara was, we will be under super strong pressure from the allies, maybe to revise the Montreux Convention, because after all, the Montreux Convention is just implementing the sovereignty of Turkey on these territories. It's on Turkish territory, so they do what they want.
Yes.
They can interpret the Montreux Convention according to their own interests. So far, they decided that after letting I'd say the initially necessary military capacities from the Russians enter the Black Sea, they decided to stop it because they wanted to keep a balance. But they've been accused of letting some commercial ships passing through, smuggling arms also to the theater of operations. So it is true that they are being under surveillance, clearly, very strongly.
And let's look at, recently there was the NATO summit in Madrid. There's no such thing as a free lunch at these things. I mean, did NATO give Erdogan any kudos? I mean, there's this bargaining chip, of course, with Sweden and Finland and their candidacy to join the NATO alliance. Erdogan has voiced his opposition to that because of their stance on the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party. What has to be done to appease Erdogan? What is he looking for?
So we don't know exactly what Turkey's checklist was for this summit, but we see it as it was again a formidable opportunity to show off for Turkey and to explain to the world that it was in a position force within NATO, because this crisis is all about the reintegration of Turkey within the NATO community, and it's participating to the framing of the next priorities of NATO. So I was in Ankara a few weeks ago where I discussed this with the policy planning at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they said our priorities for the summit are number one, Russia, because Russia is dangerous, which is very interesting. I mean, hearing that in a time where Turkey is accused of being accomplice to the Russians up to a certain point in this crisis. They said, okay, we know Russia is a dangerous player. Number two, PKK. The West has to understand that it's they are terrorists. It's not only Turkey's problem. It's about terrorism. So this wide label that makes it easier normally for the other partners to endorse Turkey's position. But they've been mainstreaming this PKK issue within NATO for the last 10 years. And the third point was China. Why China? Because they know it's on the US agenda. And it was a little bit sort of sidelined because of the whole noise made by the candidacy of Finland and Sweden, who wanted to join NATO, and Turkey blocking, etc. So Turkey was defending its own interest. It was showing the world where its interests were. But the ground bargain is with the US. So we don't know what the hidden agenda list of queries was.
I mean, I was talking to a Turkish friend of mine the other day saying, what exactly does Erdogan want? And he was very blunt. He said money. So, I mean, we look at, we have US officials recently raised alarm bells about this S-400 deal with Russia for Russian arms that would compromise, the integrity of NATO and jeopardize the American-Turkish, intelligence sharing. But I mean, how does this actually play out with Europe? I mean, there was also this denial of these stealth fighters back in 2017. How does he play this? I mean, we also have this Turkish company that continues to supply drones to Ukraine at the same time. So weapons, influence, money, what exactly?
I think the way, the best way to frame it is to understand that Turkey is in a sort of power trajectory that it's building, consolidating its own capacities on the international stage. It's doing it on the diplomatic front. You know that they have now the 6th more important diplomatic network in the world. They've built up capacities in
Africa, of course,
unbelievable.
all of the embassies,
dozens of embassies in Africa. They have this army that is now conducting military operations beyond the borders of Turkey. When they intervened in Libya, that was really, a tipping point. I mean, for everyone, everybody was looking at that because why would the Turks go to Libya? It's not that close to Turkey. So within NATO, they're being watched with a kind of respect as well because they're progressing in the way they do these military operations. It's workable. So if the connection with NATO was better, they could be a fantastic contributor to NATO's strictly military agenda.
Indeed, but the other thing, I did read there recently that there's a US Senate Foreign Relations Committee that said that Ankara cannot be seen as an ally. Is there a possibility that there would be moves to eject Turkey, which would seem, I think, a bit of a churlish move, seeing the importance of strategic importance of Turkey when it comes to the Black Sea?
No, I don't think so. But the problem is that Turkey's reputation has gone very bad especially after since the coup. Now we see that Joe Biden is struggling with the Congress in order to have his strategic vision prevail, because the Congress is also, worked by the Greek lobby, the Armenian ones. So Turkey has a lot of enemies in the US.
In the US, yeah.
And you should not forget that Fethullah Gulen, the famous preacher that is now Erdogan's number one enemy because he's supposed to have been behind the
mastermind,
exactly, the mastermind of the plot. He's still in the US, and the Turks have not managed to have him extradited to Turkey. So Turkey doesn't have the right, relays in the US. So they have to work at the strategic level in order to get their own vision, their own interests taken into account.
Very interesting. Now, moving away from American-Turkish relations, let's look finally today on Paris Perspective at Franco-Turkish relations, which we go back to 2020, where France deployed ships in support of Greece after Turkish fighter jets and gas exploration vessels entered into Greek waters. A big low point between relations between Paris and Ankara. Where do we stand today in 2022?
Yes, it's true that we reached a low point, but we cannot afford to remain there because we are. There was, I think, the culmination of this power competition in the Mediterranean, in the MENA region, more broadly, between France and Turkey. And now we understand that Turkey is a major player. Turkey has tried to make itself also useful after the fall of Kabul, when they proposed to, ensure the security of Kabul's airport. They failed because the Taliban didn't want, but now it's playing within NATO, and I don't think Emmanuel Macron could sustain again that NATO's brain dead these days, because clearly it's back in hype. Yeah. And so the Turks have a point there. So we don't have a bad relationship at the political level necessarily now, because Erdogan has stopped his super aggressive rhetoric against Emmanuel Macron. It's like once in a while he comes and extends a hand, okay, let's forget everything. So we don't forget that easily. But I mean, currently I think the relationship are on a good course.
Okay, and we have to, of course, keep an eye on what happens in those Greek waters in the coming months and weeks ahead. Dorothée Schmid, specialist on Turkey with the Paris-based IFRI think tank. Thank you very much for being on Paris Perspective.
You're most welcome.
And thank you for joining us on today's edition. And you can get all of our previous editions of the programme on rfienglish.com/podcasts. We'll be talking to you very soon. Bye-bye.